this is literally kind of my last straw. If I don't do anything, then I don't have a chance. Like I have to keep working, and then I'm probably going to forget about trading.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the SimCast. I apologize. It's been about 3 or 4 weeks since I've done one of these because I was actually was hit with COVID right before Thanksgiving. So I apologize in advance too for my voice because I still got a little bit of a cough going on. But today I'm really excited to introduce you guys to Alex Salfetnikov. And just a really cool story. Alex has been trading for like 3 or 4 years and had a massive overnight blow up, $500,000, which is just like, I mean, that just blows my mind. I can't imagine that. And has since then just been really focused on coming back and process and consistency, and actually has a trading room now where he teaches his process. And so I'm really looking forward to this, Alex, and welcome to the SimCast. Great to have you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it as well.
Awesome, man. Well, why don't we get started? I always like to start off with like background. So tell us a little bit about, how you got started. Like what got you interested in trading? What was going on in your life at the time? And maybe like, what were some of your influences? So how did you get started, man?
Yeah. So this was probably 2018, 2018 when I started thinking about it. And it was funny. I had conversations with my friends, and I said I would never do stocks, and it's not something that I would ever want to get into. And then it's funny enough, ironically, years down the road, this is exactly what I'm doing. So it's funny. But I was at that time I was following Tim Sykes. Didn't exactly know who he was, but I liked his page. He had cool photos of him traveling, and then he would post like on his story, he'd post like his students made like $1,000 or $2,000 or something, and I was kind of intrigued. And so then I just kind of, once that kind of started catching my eye, I looked more into him and what he was doing, and started doing my own research. And I was like, hey, there's actually potential to make a lot of money here. And that's kind of how it all started. I basically ended up joining his challenge after I kind of had figured things out and decided that that this is what I wanted to give a try. Mm-hmm. And I mean, at the time I was working a job, and I mean I had no reason to quit, but I was so intrigued by the exponential growth and by the, I guess, quote unquote, like unlimited money that you could make. Mm-hmm. So I ended up joining this challenge. I kind of learned the basics there. So as I was law unbiased at, for my first probably year, I did start, now that I look back, and seemed kind of like a dead market where you would get a good runner maybe once a week, maybe a couple times a month. And so it was kind of difficult to find consistency for me on the long side. So I did the best I could.
Was this 2018?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep, 2018. And I kept trying buying stuff, and it seemed like I was following the setups and the patterns, but everything was just dropping. So I decided to kind of take a step back. I started with a $2,000 account in the first place. So, and then I kind of ran that down. I put in another 2K, ran that down. Then I put in another, I think it was I actually ended up selling my car, put in like $17,000 in, and then I ran that down to $5,000. Oh, and at that point, and this is when I was like still trying to figure out the long side. So at that point, I was like, okay, I need to take a step back. This is literally kind of my last straw. If I don't do anything, then I don't have a chance. Like I have to keep working, and then I'm probably going to forget about trading. Mm-hmm. So I decided to just forget about everything that I've been trying to do. Took a step back. I started just looking at the market every day and saying, hey, what is something that I kind of recognize? What's like a setup or a pattern that I kind of see, occurring over and over and over again. So, and that to me was gappers. And I just kind of started seeing them fade off into the close, or, at least for the first, 3-4 hours of the day. So I decided to kind of start tracking those and see if I could figure out some sort of rule-based way of being able to trade those.
Cool.
And
Well, if you don't mind, if I could just kind of like
yeah.
back you up just a little bit here, because you look like a young guy. Are you willing to like share your, I don't want to like be rude or anything, asking
Oh,
your
no,
age,
no.
but how old are you?
I'm 25 now.
25. Okay. So when you got started, you were like 21, 20, something like
Yeah,
that.
2120 sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious because I do want to get into the gappers and your strategy that you found there. I think that's fascinating that like once you moved away and started like observing the market, you kind of like maybe found your niche.
Mm-hmm.
But when you got started in 2018, like, did you have any real, I would say, like responsibility? Like, do you have, I don't know if you had a family that young or if you like, if you had the ability to kind of like blow those accounts and still be okay. Like, like some traders,
Yeah.
like Gritani, like he's like moved in with his mom and dad, to begin with, just to kind of get started, that sort of thing. Like, were you able to kind of, I don't know, take the stress off your shoulders during that time?
Yeah. So basically I was, well, one, I had, I basically kind of went all in terms of like studying and trying to really figure this out. In terms of money, I ended up still working the job I had.
Okay.
And then later on, once I started feeling like I kind of started getting any of the things, I did part-time. So I started working part-time and doing this, but I was living at home at that time. I didn't really have a lot of responsibilities. So the only thing was really, just kind of not wanting to lose the money that I was putting in. So, I didn't really have a lot of bills. So that's definitely an advantage. So yeah.
What was going through your mind when you sold your car and you whittled that from like 17 grand down to 5 grand? That had to have been a little bit traumatic.
Yeah, it was really kind of at that time. It was one of those moments where it was kind of like rock bottom. And I
Mhm.
was like, it was either, hey, I take a step back and I figure it out, or I give up.
Mhm.
So, and obviously I've had, that was kind of a big moment too during my blow up, was kind of hitting rock bottom again. But at that time, yeah, I just, it was either, yeah, it was either quit or keep trying as hard as I could. And to me, I wanted to do it so bad. I was willing to lose the extra 5,000 and but give it one last shot.
Okay, cool. So now we're like in $5,000 land, and you have started observing your own like niche in the market. Like you're looking for patterns. Maybe the long setups from Sykes weren't working for you, so you're just like trying to figure things out now. Tell us about that style, that strategy that you started looking for.
Yeah. So it was a culmination of a lot of things. During this whole time, I actually ended up, yeah, I was in the challenge, but I also ended up getting Dux's stuff, Roland stuff,
Okay.
Investors Live stuff. So I had I had probably 5, 6 guys that I learned their setups from. So I kind of had an idea of what works. Um, but to me, it was I didn't like the idea of, you know, trading somebody else's style or pattern, because what I found for myself is that I won't know as much as they do, or I won't have the practice that they do on their setups, where I might feel like I need to get out, they're completely comfortable and still holding, and then, I get out for a loss, and then, you look at the end of the day and they made money on it. So to me, I always wanted to kind of make sure that I come up with my own stuff. So um, what that looked like was just basically I started tracking everything I possibly could think of, every little data point that I could think of to put into, an Excel sheet. And from there, after I started collecting a bunch of stuff, I started narrowing things down and seeing, hey, okay, this seems to work more often than not. Why? And I just, it came to a point where I had a lot of data and enough to build some sort of conviction on this type of setup. So it was so basically, yeah, it comes down to a lot of learning from other people and then kind of narrowing it down to my own, I guess, style or strategy or whatever you want to call it.
That's really cool, man, because I really feel like that's what builds your confidence, because we talk a lot about mindset and psychology, but if you don't really know, like, backward and forward, like what the stats are, what all of the data points that you're talking about behind your strategy, then it's really hard to build that confidence, wouldn't you say?
Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I know a few people where try to help out, and they sometimes they'll struggle, or they won't understand why I'm still in or why I'm not in a certain thing. And so you really need that personal practice, and you need that the conviction, which comes from you're doing your own work behind the scenes, meaning what if you're a systematic trader, that means the tracking and things like that. So if you don't have I feel like it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to find consistency and success if you're always just backboning off somebody else. It's a great starting point, I would say, to learn from everybody, especially in the beginning when you really don't know what to look for. So they help you kind of focus in. But once you kind of start getting the hang of things, I think it's very important to find your own pattern and setups.
Oh man, that's gold. Yeah, I mean that's pure gold because like, even me as a trader, like I've tried to just pick up on a little bit from everybody that I can, but it's that confidence comes from like
Yeah.
knowing your setup. Like what I wouldn't mind asking you, if you don't mind, is like
Mm-hmm.
how do you track data? Because I know like your setups, that's probably like proprietary information. You don't want to just like say like here's what you need to do, but like if you were just advising maybe somebody in year one, year two who's trying to back test a little bit, but maybe they find
Mm-hmm.
it kind of daunting or they're not great with Excel spreadsheets or like I get asked all the time, like what do I start tracking? Like, what would you advise? Maybe like, I don't know, like a handful of things to kind of start looking for,
Sure.
just to kind of help
Sure.
yourself.
Yeah. So I would say the first thing I always tell people is like start off with asking a bunch of questions. So what I mean by that is you see maybe some sort of pattern that potentially could keep playing out over and over, and just start asking questions. Just ask why is it this stock compared to something else, and then is it a biotech that always does this? Maybe it's a technology company that does it all, that always does this. Ask maybe float has something to do with it. Maybe market cap has something to do with it. Maybe the news. And so to me, I compile as many possible questions in the beginning when I'm because I'm always trying to continuously improve on my setups or find new stuff that I could trade. So the first thing is I always ask every possible question. I jot it down, and then from those questions I'll come up with a list of things that could potentially have an effect on how a stock trades. It could be a lot with fundamentals. Is there dilution, or maybe it's the amount of volume that's been trading. Anything that I can think of, I just kind of throw into a list, and from there I just or it could be one of the big things for me is time of day. So I track, especially for my covers, since I am more short biased. I'm always trying to get the best cover. So I look at time of day. When is it time of day? Is it maybe like some sort of percentage that it pulls back? So I just ask all these questions, and then I'll track every single thing. And then after a while, you'll kind of start seeing, what may have an effect on a stock and what may not. And then if, let's say, for example, market cap, if that does not have any effect, then I'll cut it out. Or maybe it's institutional ownership, is it, or float size. And so I'll kind of start narrowing things down, if it doesn't seem to affect the price action. So that's kind of I would say the first step is try to just ask every possible question about what you can, like, just anything you can think of, and just throw it in, and then you can narrow down after you kind of get more data.
Would you say that maybe even before you start asking those questions, in your observation of the market, are you looking for like the biggest bang for the buck? So it's like you're saying like, okay, I see these gap up and then crap like 50, 60, 70% in one day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and if is, if I'm seeing this happen like so many times, like gaps up, pulls back, or whatever it is, like, maybe even on the long side, like you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing like these massive moves, and it's like, I see this happen. Like, how do I take advantage of that? And so it's like you're trying to maybe find the highest time value moves in the market every day,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously you don't want just you don't want
Yeah,
something that's
yeah,
just going to fizzle out, or go sideways or have a little inside day or whatever. Like, you're looking for those big moves like as often as possible, right?
right,
And then
yeah.
and then you build those questions maybe like on top of whatever that pattern is that you're seeing.
Mm-hmm. One last note, maybe. So that's kind of exactly, how I first found any sort of consistent pattern was, I was just waking up every day and looking at the scans, and kind of over time, over the course of, I think it was like a year until I actually found something that was working, was I just saw the same thing kind of happen every single day. And then from there, I started, asking those questions. But yeah, I think it's hard because a lot of newer traders, they come in and they want to find something right away, and some do and some don't, and it can be hard. But the best thing is, a lot of times it's just screen time. You just got to show up every single day, and just over time you kind of start getting used to how things move, and you might start seeing patterns, and then that's when you can kind of start tracking.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, why don't we move into a little bit maybe of your trades? Maybe kind of
Yeah,
segue into
let's do it.
that. This is HEPA. Now, this was 2019, right? So it was
Correct.
obviously pre-blow up. We'll get to the big event. But maybe
Hmm.
talk us through this trade. Was this during that time when you were or maybe just tell us, like, you weren't long biased here, you were kind of tracking these things and figuring out the short
Yeah,
side here, or what was going on?
yeah, that's basically what I was doing. So a lot of um a lot of my trades pre-blow up, I felt like I had an idea of kind of where stock would end up on the day, but I wasn't really sure how to kind of get from point A to point B. And so what you'll notice, is that I may have been on the, like, oh, by the end of the day, I might be on the right side of the move, but like, especially here on HEPA, you can see that, I was in, and then it kept going higher, and then I just
Right.
kind of kept holding. So a lot of what defined my trading back then, which was completely terrible, and I just do not trade that way anymore, is I had no risk management. Um, I didn't really know where to cut, or even if I had an idea of where to cut, when it got time, or when it came down to taking the loss, I wasn't able to do that. I was just either oversized, and so when I was looking at the potential negative P&L, I was like, man, I don't want to take this loss. This is a lot, and so a lot of times I would end up in a hold and hope situation,
Yeah.
and it was the worst way to trade, but I wasn't really sure how to do it, but the other thing was, a lot of it was greed. I
Mhm.
came into trading thinking that I'm smart, and I can figure this out, and I can be a millionaire sooner than most people. And that played a very bad role in the way I traded, because I wanted to make money so bad that I didn't have the risk management. I wasn't able to take a loss. So but in terms here of HEPA, I mean, I just basically would short like a bounce or a spike, and then kind of hope for the best.
Okay, were you
So
shorting into that spike right there, that it looks like you've got a
yeah,
red
yeah,
arrow right
yeah,
there?
yeah. So yeah,
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, later on in those trades, we'll have like real executions, but yeah,
Okay.
this was shorting just into that spike there, and as you can see, I held through the following push, with really no idea where, how far or how high it could go.
Gotcha. Yeah. So why don't we do this? Like, what do you think you would do differently looking back on your 2019 trade here? Like, is this something that you would take in 2021 now, or and if so, like, what would you have done differently?
So yeah, if this, if I liked everything, I don't exactly remember the news or anything like that, but if I had liked the gapper, as of, if it gapped up today just like this, and I
Mhm.
let, it fit all my criteria and everything, then I would be short post that, push to, what was it, 455 or something. So I would be shorting the pops after that big crack.
Okay,
So
so maybe
most likely I would have been in right there. Yep, that's most likely where I would have been in, risking high of day,
okay,
and and then and then hoping for that fade. So that's
okay,
how I trade now.
nice. Yeah, so you've got like you've got a nice like failed follow through. It looks like up here, and
Yep,
that gives you then the confidence to maybe like risk above that, put your entry here with an expectation that we're gonna like maybe break low of day or something.
correct. Yeah.
Okay, cool, man. And then it looks like we've got a nice little kill candle or whatever you want to call that in there
Yep. Yep.
on on a nice little volume signature as well. So yeah, that's really interesting because it but I could see like even from a seasoned trader's point of view, like I mean, if you look at that, like that stuff candle that you entered on to begin with, I mean that would make you think maybe it's backside, right? Or
Yeah, and that's most likely why I entered. My biggest issue back then was risk management. Like I was saying, I had an idea of probably how things would trade,
Mhm.
but I didn't have the risk management. So as you can see, I kind of just held through a whole squeeze, and
Yeah,
at no point did I cover. So that was those kind of things were my biggest issues. Cutting the trades when I should.
cool. So here's another one, 2019.
Hmm.
Talk us through this trade. It looks like went short way over here and maybe a similar kind of thing.
Exactly. As you can see, this is a very, very common issue that I had, which is exactly what led to my blow up. Maybe at this point, there was some sort of reason to be short that, I don't exactly remember everything about this trade, but I was in, and technically I should be at least risking, at the very most high of day. And I think in a lot of cases back then, what would happen is I would, let's say I was initially right on a trade, and I started seeing some, unrealized P&L. Like, you can see that around just right after 10, it went down to like $1.50. So this is one of the biggest issues I had was when I started seeing it work. I started getting so excited that I would lose sight of risk, and I'd be like, oh, it's got to come back down. Like, it's gonna come back down. Like, it was just down there,
Yeah.
and then obviously I never cut it anywhere, and I covered into after hours, after the whole move. So just another example of how poorly I was trading.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great example. What's maybe take us back to that mindset. Like if you were coaching a beginner um, who has kind of like that mentality of like, well, shoot, I was up, I'm just gonna maybe like keep fighting it. I mean, to your credit, I will say this much. Like, I don't see a whole lot of like add, like I mean, that's
Yeah.
where you see a lot of beginners like trying to just like fight their position on the way up and maybe average up. I mean, it doesn't look like you had that problem, which is actually maybe have saved you a lot there.
Yeah, I never, like, I've had some issues with adding. To me, that's never really been a crazy issue just because I started under PDT. So I
Okay.
kind of got used to these like one entries and like
Mhm.
one exits. So, um, and I also kind of knew like if I kept down and if it kept going, I would just be down even more. I've definitely been in bad situations where I have done that, but I would say for the most part, that wasn't really like a huge prevalent issue. It was more of not being able to cut a loss.
Cool. Well, I'll ask you the same question. Going back to your 2019 self here, like how did you learn to cut a loss? Like what is it in the mindset? Is it just do you think it's just suffering so much pain over time as you learn to trade that you're like, that's it. I'm cutting it. Like I've been here, done that, not doing it again. Like, is
Yeah.
that coachable, or do you have to just feel the pain?
I think you just got to feel the pain. No matter how much, you tell somebody, no matter how much, like and you've seen it yourself, everybody who's made it has always said to cut losses, right? And you can always will see newbies never cut their losses. So I really do think that until somebody has just kind of gone through the pain, suffered as much as they possibly could where they can't take it anymore, that they'll be able to change. And that's why I think hitting rock bottom is so powerful, because it really like makes you take a step back and really start analyzing what you're doing wrong and kind of what you can do to improve.
Man, it's so powerful. And it's one of those things that I think as traders, we kind of want to avoid. It's like we're so scared of it, It's like you start out trading and you hear about all these guys who are millionaires, and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna blow up." You're like, "No, no, not me."
Yeah.
I can't afford that. I'm sorry. That's not gonna happen to me. But it's like once you get into it, it's like you have to really experience like the depth of like suffering from trading and the
Yep.
mistakes.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully,
You won't.
hopefully there's some way like you can. I mean, not everybody has huge blowups, and some people
Right.
make it. I don't know though. How can you avoid that? Maybe like through is there proper training? Because it seems like you're similar to me. Like you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants, learning on your own. Yes, you have gurus that you try to like glean things from, but like there's nobody like looking over your shoulder saying like don't do that.
Yeah. So I think that the biggest thing that I recommend, and I know everybody has their own opinion on it, but I highly recommend hard stops, especially when you're new. Like, yes, you can get stopped out and it can go right back to where you had wanted it to, but you'll just, if you don't get into a habit, or if you have bad habit of not cutting losses, and you know that about yourself, you just gotta put hard stops. Even I do hard stops now. I'd rather take a normal size loss on a trade that I had planned to take that loss, if it didn't work out, than to, kind of put it into my own hands and then make a decision, and then maybe see some sort of like candle that I like, oh, this is bearish. Now I'm going to hold it. And then it ends up going higher. Or on the opposite, on the long side, you like see something that might make you like feel like it's a good long. But, as we know in this market, there's a lot more big players in small caps. So the safest way, especially if you're new, is I just recommend use a hard stop. Like take it out of your hands to take the loss.
Yeah, that's so wise. I was doing a little interview with it was like an email interview with Dr. Steenbarger too, and it seems to me like what you teach now and through your experience kind of resonates with that. That one, the back testing kind of gives you the confidence maybe to know like, okay, this is what the trade is more likely to do. Because if you think about it, when beginners start out, like you were saying, they don't have the screen time, so they don't know like where this squeeze is going to go, like like
yeah.
And instead of like not knowing, through back testing, it seems like you gain the confidence of almost like being in a simulator. Like you've seen so many trades working that you kind of learn the subtle nuances, what the caveats are, like when it's not going to work, where I need to enter, like you were just talking about on AGRE there. You know when it's going to fail, right? Does that not give you the confidence then to know like you've got to spend time either like in some kind of like replay engine, you got to do your own back testing, and then at the same time you got to be willing to stop out?
Yeah, I mean that is the majority of what I do. The most of my day is spent not trading. Most of my day is spent back testing, looking through stuff. And and then when I come to the market, so basically the way I see it is, the behind the scenes is my practice where, like I'm, like in basketball, you're practicing whatever, right? You're spending all these hours, not in a game, you're spending all these hours on the court, just practicing, taking shots, whatever. And then you have game time, which, only lasts, relatively a minimal amount compared to how much you practice. And so that's exactly what I do with my trading. Most of my work is spent behind the computer, not during market hours. And then it's a couple hours once the market opens, and then I'm done usually. So, and to me, I come into the market, I know for the most part exactly how I'm going to enter, exactly how I'm going to exit. And the only work that's required from me, this is within my strategy, the only work that's required from me is to just be able to click the buttons and that's it. Everything, all the conviction, all the know-how that I now have is all done from back testing and seeing charts over and over again.
That's something I think I'm gonna like cut this portion of the podcast out and make it into like a little 2-minute clip there, because what you said is like, that's, everybody needs to hear that, man. Everybody needs to hear that, because it's such a professional job that most people don't realize. It's like,
yeah,
Steenbarger was talking about, if I went into surgery and it was like, some kind of new surgery, he would expect the surgeon to have practiced that, like in a lab on a cadaver for like, hours.
yeah.
It's not like he's just coming in and he's like just now started cutting on people. Like, he knows exactly what to expect, So that's gold. That's absolute gold. What do you say we fast forward real quick to the blow ups, and let's get that out of the way. Maybe talk about your mindset. I've got a nice little screen share here that we could look. I know you didn't have the screenshots, but why don't you take us through APVO and ONCT? Which one you want to start with?
We can do APVO.
Okay.
That was the majority of my account was in that one.
Okay, so APVO, and we are on the 6th of November here. Why don't I fast forward our time frame here just so we can see most of the day? I'll tell you what, I'll take us to 4 p.m.
Okay.
All right, so here's 4 p.m. APVO. Talk us through the trade, man. What was going on? And if you need me to throw anything up here on the chart, I'll be happy to.
Sure. No, I don't think you need to throw anything on there. I trade very simply. All I got on there is just VWAP on my chart. So
there we go. You got VWAP there, buddy.
Yeah. Basically this had been moving for, past couple of days prior to this Friday. And, I saw this, it seemed what, had been the kind of extension that the stock had needed, right around, noon, maybe like 11 a.m. And then you kind of get this, this, what I think it's like day 3 of the run. And then you get this, big pull from, what was the top? What do we have there? Like 20 or 30 or something.
Yeah, like 28.
Right around 28. Yeah. And then it pulls, like to 22 to $22.
Yeah.
So I ended up taking an entry post that, move where it kind of started rolling over. So it must have been probably like a $25 or $26 entry was kind of my first entry, like somewhere right around there. Yeah. And then basically right before the close into that push, I ended up adding another entry. So that kind of had made up my full size.
Okay.
And
so you're probably
I think
averaged in around VWAP or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And I'm pretty sure I was in with like 1,000 shares.
Okay.
Or maybe 1,000 or 2,000, something like that. And it seemed like everything was going okay. This day 3 of the run, everything seemed fine. Until after hours hit, and then literally out of nowhere, I think it came out with news of, I think it was like an 8K. I think somebody acquired shares, or I don't exactly remember the news, but something came out, and it went from closing right around $3 or so to pushing to like 88 or $90 after hours. And that, and going in with, 1,000 shares, that's basically being down 200-300%.
Ouch.
So yeah, that's and so I was
Yeah.
closed out by my broker. Um
Mm.
I didn't like, I watched this, but I was in so much shock that I just sat there and I was frozen just watching this thing rip, and my
Mm.
broker taking me out. And
So,
it was one of the most like painful experiences. I've been working for, several years at this point to, make almost $500,000, to watch this just completely, like, my account just completely get erased in the matter of like 30 minutes.
so you had built that $5,000 account that you dwindled from 17 grand all the way to nearly like 500,000 by this point.
Yeah, that's correct.
Wow. And wow. So, I mean, I don't, yeah, I mean, other than just shock, like, what did you do, man? Did you cry? I mean, I would have
I
cried.
I know exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I usually don't cry very often, but I think I remember just shaking more, like my hands and my whole body was just shaking more than I've ever. And I just kind of, I literally, like, I fell on the ground, just like in my office, and just kind of started crying. Like I didn't know what to do. Like this was like so much money, like to me, especially, like, someone
Sure.
who didn't have a whole lot, and then working so hard and making this much and thinking that you finally got it figured out and you know what you're doing and you can do this as a career. And I started looking at homes and things that I could potentially buy, to all of it just being erased in the matter of minutes. So
That's
yeah,
so
this is the second like rock bottom moment that I had in my trading career. So
yeah.
not fun.
No,
but
I can tell. Yeah, go ahead.
being on the other side of it, as much as it hurts and as much as it stings, it's better that this had happened then than now or later in the future, because the lessons I learned and the risk management that I now apply to my trading is going to save me hundreds, thousands, if not millions down the road. So
Yeah.
as much as it hurt, I know that I needed this to kind of build myself back as a much better trader.
Let me ask you the same questions I ask you on the others. What,
Yeah.
knowing what you know now, how do you trade to avoid situations like this? Like, do you still hold overnight, or what was missing here that you
Yeah.
you would do now?
So 99% of the time, I don't hold overnight anymore. 100% of the time, I will never hold anything overnight that's below 5 million float.
Mm.
So this was, I think it still is to this day, but this is like a million float. It's,
Okay.
it's what I consider a micro float. So,
Yeah.
you know, um, I would never do this, type of trade again. And I don't even short like multi-day runners that are under 5 million shares float.
Mm.
I just don't touch them. I mean, I have every now and then, if maybe I forgot to check something, or if I kind of had some FOMO, but for the most part, 95% of the time, I don't touch anything sub 5 million.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm noticing on our scanner over here. The cool thing about Tradingsim is we do have like live scanners going back 3 years, and looks like ONCT did the same thing.
Yep. It went. This was actually a good example of kind of a reoccurring issue that I had. So I was short this earlier in the day. I don't remember the fundamentals on this stock, if it was a low float or not, but basically after midday, once this kind of started rolling over, I was short, and my average is probably right around VWAP, I think. Um, I think I like added into the winner as it was working, but yeah, I was short that, and and then I just, when it pushed into the close, I remember having a moment where I was deciding, should I just cover this? Because at this point, I think I was red on the trade, because my average was probably VWAP or maybe a bit lower, but I was definitely red. I remember being red on it going into the close and having to make that decision of whether I cover or hold it. And I was like, whatever, I think I'm going to hold it. You know, I think it has a good chance of gapping down the next day. And as you can see, it was the same exact situation on two stocks at the same exact time.
Well, so that one hit you too, then.
Yeah. So it, you hear a lot about people, you know, getting killed after hours, but try getting killed on two stocks at the same exact time doing the same thing. So,
well, do you trade multiple stocks during the day, or do you kind of just have your eyes on like one or two nowadays?
so nowadays, you know, before I would kind of trade whatever's running.
Yeah.
I didn't have a set criteria, where I didn't have a set really, you know, yeah, basically I just didn't have a set criteria of what I was looking for. I did have an idea of like, this is what I want this to happen, but yeah, so I traded a lot of stuff. You know, I would sometimes I'd have 5-10 trades going at the same time. But now, you know, now I stick to a one or two, usually max.
Cool. And it sounds like you trade a lot less too. Like you may go days, I've seen on your Twitter where you're like, hey, I didn't make any trades today. So
Yeah. So,
yeah.
you know, now I'm in the place where, you know, I might make, like, December's been, you know, quite slower, a lot slower,
Mm-hmm.
not quite, but it's been much slower, you know, this year. And I've only made, I mean, last week I made one trade, I think, or
Yeah.
maybe like one, and then one was kind of like a scratch. And I didn't, and then this week, you know, there's been like maybe three, I think. So I'm not really looking to trade every single day. You know, to me, if the setup's there, I'll take it. You know, I one of the biggest things kind of during that time when I blew up was somebody had pointed me in the direction of Mark Douglas and his stuff on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the biggest game changers for me, was just learning that I need to trade. And I love the way he says it, but you have to trade in probabilities. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, especially for people who are, you know, back testing and have some sort of system, or, you know, they have all these stats, you know, and they call themselves a systematic trader, it's very important that you apply, you know, your system every single day. Meaning that, you know, if I'm looking at, you know, a year's worth or 2 year, 3 years worth of data that's telling me, you know, hey, this is going to work, you know, 75% of the time or 80% of the time, then you need to go in every single day just accepting the fact that today might be a loser. You know, today might be that 25% chance that it doesn't work out, and that's okay. Because, you know, over the course of a year, over the course of 2 years, I know that, you know, if the data holds up, I know that in a year or two I'm going to be profitable, you know, by the end of the year. So that's kind of one of the biggest things that changed was I size appropriately now. Meaning, you know, then I would be in, like, sometimes I think back then I had what, like $400,000 or $500,000 account. And I remember one day where I was probably in with close to $1 million in stock. So
Wow.
I was, you know, I was in a lot more than even my account. You know, I was in double. But now I go in with 1-2% risk of my account per trade. So
Can you step us through maybe like the days after that, days and weeks and
sure.
months? Like how did you I'd be interested to know like how you dealt with like the trauma of that experience. Like how did you refresh yourself? How did you pull things together? How did you
Hmm.
reset? You know, what were
Sure.
some of the steps you took?
Yeah. So I remember blowing up, and I was like, okay, like I think I had, you know, just a few $1,000s left in my account, because, you know, just the way that my broker, when they got me out, I had a little bit left. Um, but I was seriously considering whether I should keep going or not, because, you know, I was like, cannot, I can't have this in the future where I'm, you know, have a family, a home, cars, you know, payments and everything, and then just lose everything and have to go bankrupt. Like, that's just not a possibility. You know, it's okay when losing everything when you have no responsibilities, but I just I wasn't okay with knowing that this could happen again.
Yeah.
So I took a few weeks off. You know, some people say it's not enough. Some people say it's kind of a long time, but I took a couple of weeks and I was able to kind of reset. I understood that, you know, that there's still potential in the stock market to make money. I understood that the mistakes were, you know, self-inflicted. It wasn't, you know, the market taking my money or the market changing. I understood that, you know, trading still works. It's just about me fixing the things that I'm not good at. And if I can do that, then I can crawl my way back out. That kind of coupled with my motivation to be a trader was just so intense that it was almost like nothing could stop me from coming back. Like I just wanted to be a trader so bad, like every single day. Like that's all I wanted to do. You know, I slept and dreamt about trading. You know, I was, you know, my first year and a half, maybe 2 years, you know, I was putting in 10, 15 hours every single day, you know, just having like a Sunday off, you know, just studying all these like other gurus, you know, stuff. And so I was so into trading that I just did not want to give up, no matter, you know, no matter how much I lost. So that also, my parents kind of were like, hey, okay, you know, we've seen that you had some success with it. Like you can kind of the same things, like, you know, your mistakes, like you can kind of, you know, get back into it. And so they actually helped me. They actually loaned me money to kind of get myself back over PDT so I could start trading again. So when I blew up, I refunded after like several weeks or after a month. I refunded back over PDT, which was pretty scary because it wasn't, this time I knew this was not my money.
Yeah.
And I was not okay with losing my parents' money. So I had to be extremely strict with what I was doing.
Do you think that helped
And
you a little bit?
it definitely helped because it added so much pressure. Like I just could not, I would not be able to live with myself if I lost my parents' money. So I knew that if I had to trade, I had to stop out. I had to take losses, like, and, you know, let your winners work, obviously, but I had to take those losses. So that was kind of an added pressure that was actually helpful. I did end up falling below PDT for probably a month or two after that. I ended up having a couple bad losses again. And it's funny because I just blew up, you know, almost 500,000. Like, how much more pain could I take, right? But it's funny enough that I ended up taking big losses kind of after that, but they kind of got smaller and smaller and smaller. So it wasn't an immediate change, even though I wanted it to be. But my bad habits and kind of the greed inside me was still there, and that's something that took me, you know, a while to kind of really work on myself. You know, I wish it could have been just a snap of the finger. I blew up, and then I'm a new person. But I found out like pretty fast that wasn't the case. I was still the same greedy person. I still, you know, couldn't cut losses. So it took a lot of work to actually practice cutting losses every single day.
Do
So
you do you feel like that event, that $500,000 loss, did it give you any kind of like trading scared or like scarcity bias, like not letting trades work because you're just going to take them as soon as you had profit? Like, did it affect you that way, or were you still able to kind of
mhm.
like stay in the moment, stay in the trade, have patience, let the trade work?
Yeah, I still had that just because I was so convinced of all the work that I put in. I was convinced of my stats, basically. It was basically all the stuff that I've done. And it wasn't just like a month's worth of like stats. It was like, you know, a few years. So like I more or less knew that this stuff, like, that my system works. it
Yeah.
was it was it was a matter of stopping out and taking those losses. So to me, it was like, yeah, I was scared, but the thing is, I sized completely way down in relation to my account size. So now, I watch Mark Douglas. I know Brian Lee. He reached out to me personally. He DM'd me and he's like, "Yo, check out my blogs. Like, this is how I trade." And so I started, applying a, percentage of my account risk per trade. And so when you're trading such a small size that it doesn't affect you emotionally, you're going to trade the best you can. So basically it was trading a lot smaller and still having the conviction in my setups. So yeah, I wasn't really trigger shy. I never was trigger shy. Even when I first started, I had $2,000 and I was taking like 20, trying to take like, I switched into a cash account. So I was still taking like 10 trades a day with a $2,000 account. And so I was never trigger shy. So that, could be a bad thing, obviously. But yeah, I was so convinced in what I was doing that it was going to work that,
See,
I just kept
that to
doing it.
me is like if you're watching this, like you need to pause that. You need to like think about that for just a moment, because you and I have already talked about this earlier in the show, Alex, that
Hmm.
it is so important to your mindset to have that statistical edge that you just know and you believe in, right? Because like if you
Oh
think
yeah.
about
Oh
it,
yeah.
if you're just relying on some guru strategy or like something that you saw or just some random pattern that you think might work, like that confidence is not going to be there. And just the fact that you
Yep.
had a $500,000 loss, wiped out your account, but we're still able to come back with confidence because you believed in the work that you had put in and the stats that you had and the edge that you had found.
Yeah.
And it was just a matter of like cutting out what doesn't work.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened. Yeah. That's
That's
exactly how I was able to get back to, a solid level of trading again.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. So, um, why don't we take a look at some of the post blow up trades and just kind of talk about your path to consistency?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. So, what would you say were some of the biggest things that you changed post blow up that really led you to that?
So one of the biggest things was narrowing down my focus. So instead of, kind of trading every gapper that's up there in the morning, I would be a lot more selective of what I'm trading. And again, that all comes back to, tracking to see, what has, a higher probability of working than not. Um, and so that was kind of a big thing, was just cutting out stuff that doesn't work as well, or that I don't see that's working that well. And the other was identifying like good risk levels, of like, and just being able to, before I place a trade, understand, hey, this is the level that I'm cutting at no matter what. Um, and the third thing was, sticking to my plan 100%. So I like to say, like, stick to your trade plan and then evaluate later, meaning like after you're out of the trade already, then go back, go, if your stats need to change because of, something that, you maybe hadn't seen before that kind of appeared on this trade, then go ahead and do that. But I don't like to mess with my trade plan at all after I'm in a trade. I'm either wrong or I'm right, and then I'll evaluate it at the end of the day. So those three things are kind of the big things that I changed. But yeah.
Cool. Cool. Well, talk us through SCKT here, because just thinking about the HEPA trade earlier, where you had that nice big squeeze, but you were front side, and
Right.
just like completely night and day.
Yeah. So a lot, or not a lot, but 100% of my setups now on the short side, I take long setups too, but they don't come around as often as I'd like. But um, now I'm only trading backside and what I consider backside. So to me, instead of, old me, just randomly kind of maybe shorting into strength, I have a definition of what backside is for myself, and I only short into that. So it makes it, a lot safer. Your win rate goes up. Yes, you give up the potential, top tick, or, catching the entire move.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it would have been nice to be short this at like the very top of its run at, like 9:30, and then, cover all the way at like 12 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But, your risk is undetermined sometimes if you're trying to top tick.
Right.
So to me, now I'm, as you can see on this one, I'm shorting the bounce after that, after it's pulled back, a big chunk. And then, my risk is high of day on this particular one.
Cool. And and you get I think you covered here, but
Yeah.
you've got if this is that's part of the meat of the move there, right? So it's like you're saying, you don't have to top tick everything. There's still plenty of meat on that bone. I don't know what that came out to.
I mean, if you took the, if you calculated the entire move on this, it's probably comes out to like a 2-to-1 risk to reward or something. But if you were able to, short the balance and then cover at like 1150 or something, but you're not always going to be able to. I mean, my whole thing is I try to catch the entire move. So that the reason I track like time of day and like, how much it's pulled back, because I want to be able to get the best possible risk to reward that I can. And, sometimes when you're shorting, you can't always get, like you're never really going to get a 10-to-1 if you're trying to, capture a big, picture move. If you go long, it's much easier to get a 10-to-1. But usually on the short side, you don't see something like that. So to me, it's pretty important to try to catch the whole move. Or maybe it's just my style or personality. I like to kind of capture the big move, and I don't really like to go in and out too much. I'd rather take maybe an entry, a couple entries, and then exit a few times. That's kind of more of my style.
Yeah, and just looking at this, it's such a clean trade, man. Like right into prior resistance, and you've got your backside rules here, and wow, yeah. I mean, like I was saying, like night and day. It's just amazing how that consistency and discipline changes.
Yeah, and I think another thing is like if like a lot of these movers, if you just wait like for an hour or two after the open, you're going to be in a much better position. If you're looking to short, you're going to be in a much better position to short something, after, you don't have to be in the first few minutes. I definitely have a setup where it's very close to the open, but on some of them, I don't even enter until like 10:30, 11. Like today on, like BLPH today, I didn't enter until way later in the day.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I've noticed that too. Like I'm in year 4 of my trading career, and I've got like one strategy for the open, but man, I typically if it's not after 10 a.m., like I'm not pushing buttons. I'm waiting for all the emotion to settle down and like wait for my setup, and that can be so difficult to do as a beginner, because you just it's just so exciting and you just want to push buttons.
I remember my very first trade. I mean, I barely had any shares, but I remember going in and I was just shaking because of how excited I was. And it was my very first trade. It was probably like maybe like 50 shares or something of like something cheap. But I was like, it was just the fact of like trying to be in, and I want the action, and it's funny how now I'm like, I rather spend as least amount of time, trading as I can.
That's such a good point, because I've been there. Like I've spent like the whole first year like that. Like, what's it gonna do? Like hopefully it goes in my direction. It's like, if that's you and you're listening to this podcast, like stop trading. Like you really need to you need to find a strategy that's like so boring. It's like the back of your hand. Like you know exactly what's going to happen either way, because you've seen it happen so many times. So you're okay if it stops out. It's not going to be scary. You've experienced it before, but that strategy so well that it's no longer scary. Like it takes the mystery out of trading, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. Going in, like I know full well that I could, I go in, and as soon as I go in, I put my hard stop in. And a lot of times what I'll do is, well, majority of the days I'll go to the gym. Like I don't even watch the trade, because I know that sometimes it's hard to sit through, like, you just had some unrealized gain and then it bounces and you're like, man, I just was up this much, and you're like, is it going to squeeze again? And so you get this, like, you start getting jittery and you start kind of freaking out about what could happen. So I love to just enter, semi-stop, and leave. Like I have a trade plan. I know where I'm gonna exit. So why get caught up in this very minute price action, and that that might not even matter. A stock never goes straight up or straight down. So to me, because I'm trying to capture a big picture move, I let the trade work. So and to help with that, and I suggest this to, everyone that, tries kind of what I do, is I just tell them, set your hard stop and leave the computer. Don't look at your screen. When I was first starting out, when I was first learning like patience, because I was on the West Coast at the time, I would get into my trade and then I'd go back to bed for a couple hours.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Yeah, but it's so true, man. Like there's so much emotion involved with, and if you sit there and you watch the gyrations, it's like, oh, is it going to squeeze now? Like, is this?
It can be super overwhelming.
Yeah. And it's not worth it, really. Like if you think about it, because like if you've seen your setup so many times, where you're going to stop, ideally where you'd like to take your target, and it's going to take time to get there.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, go to the gym, blow off some steam, put your stop in. Yeah, you don't have to be in front of your computer all day.
Yeah, and you see this a lot from some of these bigger traders. I don't know what they do now, but I remember listening and hearing about this where Roland Wolf used to do the same thing. He'd go and golf ducks. I remember he would like step out, and I remember he said he was like shopping or something. So like it's like it's if other people that have made it and are big time traders do that, then it must be a good thing to do, right? I mean, that's obviously different if you're more of a scalper, or if you got to follow the momentum and price action, tick to tick. That's different. But for what I do, and for you don't need to be at the computer all day long.
No, great point. And like you were saying earlier, Mark Douglas, he preaches that, like, if put the trade on and let it work, put the stop in, and
Yep.
through your back testing and your outcome testing that over time, it doesn't matter if it hits your stop while you're gone. Like you're going to have enough trades to make you money in the end,
Yep.
So,
yep.
Cool, man. Why don't we walk through one more of your more recent trades here? It looks like this is GRTX.
Yep. So this was actually this week.
I was gonna say GRTX sounds familiar.
Yeah, it was this week. I mean, and you can see kind of the difference between sitting through squeezes in my early stages, where again, like on this one, I'm not even touching it until 11 a.m. basically, and you still get a really good chunk into the close.
Yeah, no, that's really nice. Without like giving us too much of your strategy here, was it just you kind of just thinking like failed follow through, like now you're risking where, like maybe up here?
Yep. Risk was high day. Yep.
Okay, cool. So
yeah, so I saw that the trend line break, you see it push in the morning, versus pre-market, resistance, and then it fails, and then I was just in on the following bounce.
Yeah, super nice entry there. That's awesome. Cool, man. I think you've got one more that we could take a look at if you wanted to.
Yeah, let's do it.
And then we'll kind of wrap things up. Let's see.
Yeah. So this was earlier in the year. And this was kind of so middle of this year, I was going through a bit of a rough patch where, I mean, I'm assuming a lot of people did, because the market had changed so dramatically and shifted from January and February, everyone was having killer months, and then things kind of got choppy, especially once AMC hit, AMC and GME, right? So but basically the idea was the same. This was just kind of like that first turning point, or what everyone calls the first red day type thing, where I after the open, I was watching it, and once I was convinced that it was kind of losing steam and it was going to start heading down, I was just basically just kind of trying to size into the bounce, risking off of high of day, and then looking for that fade into the close.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it looks like you had a couple entries here. How would you? I mean, where would your stop have been? Maybe like high of the pre-market on this one, or?
Yeah, it was. That's exactly right. And then there's also that entry. It was just a little starter.
Okay.
So I was in small, and then all those other entries and exits, they were all like small pieces, and then the majority of my size came in later. Once kind of that little retest of what was it, but like around 12:30 it pushed, and then it kind of came back in, and then at 1 o'clock it pushed again, and then it had trouble, and then it failed. So that's kind of when I had a little bit more conviction. So I was kind of sizing in a little bit more off of that level, and so that's when I kind of put more size.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like you've got like a nice little wick there with on
Yeah.
increased volume. So probably giving you confidence maybe to, where would you risk, like to this level here?
Yep. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And then you got this beautiful little break right there. And then look,
Yep.
covered at the close, it looks like.
Yep.
Solid, man. Yeah. I mean, really, really clean action there. Well, that's great, man. So, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us, like just a little bit of your strategy.
Yeah, of course.
How would you feel like, so you're actually like, so November 6th would have been like your 1 year anniversary from your blow up. Like, give us like the state of Alex Salfetnikov 1 year later. Like, how do you feel about your trading?
Yeah, it's actually funny. This is kind of a side note, but I want to mention this because on that 1 year anniversary, I ended up tweeting something. But so APVO, right, was a ticker that blew me up, you know. And it's funny, a year later, at the same exact time, APVO gaps up. And so I ended up trading that. I ended up coming out with a win on that one. A year later. So it was kind of cool. Like I knew, so it ended up dumping off of the open. I was short off of the open. So I forget exactly how or where, but I ended up like covering half. It like pulled back, and then late into the day, it ended up squeezing big. And it's funny because I knew APVO, I knew how much it could squeeze. So I ended up covering pretty quickly and still kind of came out with a win on that one. Maybe I shouldn't have taken that trade in the first place. But it was within my it wasn't within my setup for the most part. But it was funny because I don't know why, or how, I don't know the market maker's mind, but APO came back, literally a year later at the same time. So I thought that was funny.
Well, you know what's funny about that is like my biggest blow up was SPI.
Oh,
yeah,
that day when it ran like 1,000 or 2,000% or something.
Oh, it was nuts. Yeah, it went from like $1 to like $40, and I just kept stupidly shorting the front side of the move. But it was September 23rd. But yeah, you remember those dates, right?
Yep.
September 23rd, 2020. And I remember September 23rd, 2021. I was like, I may have traded it. I think I did, actually. I think I made a little bit of money off of it, but it was just one of those things where it was like, are you going to run today? It's like, if you are, like, I'm taking you down this time. Like, I'm not going to fall for it, and I'm going to get all that money back, No, I mean, but it's kind of cool, you do remember those
oh yeah,
particular days.
Yeah, it's burned into my memory probably forever now. I don't think I'll ever forget APVO.
Yeah. And it's
I'm sorry, what was
go ahead.
What was the question? Sorry, it was kind of a side note.
No, I was just asking, like, how do you feel like the state of your trading now? I mean, do you feel like are you building back? Are you still building back? You finally reached that consistency because, it seems like you're really hitting your stride.
Yeah. So, I'm really happy with where I am right now. I've, it's, even since, blow up and this year, I've had to refine and really like become like basically just make my strategy better. Mm-hmm. So even now, like, I'm always trying to improve, but I've kind of gotten my setups so defined and so like selective of kind of what I want and what I want to look for, that right now, like, it honestly, to me, it's almost as just a matter of time before I can, hit the 1 mil and more. So I basically, all I do now is I have my setups and I know exactly how I'm going to trade them, and I just wait for them every single day. So I'm very confident right now with where I am. As long as I, keep my risk management, I don't see why I won't hit the 1 mil eventually, right? Yeah. But but yeah, I'm just basically just doing what I'm doing. And, sometimes, I have to wait, 3, 4, 5 days until my setup comes. And I think that's fine. So I'm, yeah, instead of trading 10 trades a day, I'm extremely selective, and, it's going pretty well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Well, listen, thanks so much. We really do appreciate you taking the time. It's just been a great story, man. And,
Thank you.
we were talking to another trader one time who also had a blow up, and I just remember him saying, like, it's not so much about, you're not trying to make that back. You just,
Yeah. Yep.
you just start the next day from where you are. And it sounds like you've done that, man. And it's just a testament to your discipline, your patience, and your endurance. And you got to have that in this business. So thanks so much for sharing that story, Alex.
Yeah, you're welcome. I hope it helps other people to kind of,
Yeah.
I know sometimes it takes that personal kind of, you got to experience and kind of go through the downfall yourself sometimes. But if it can help somebody out to, really understand, like, you can lose everything, you can lose a lot in minutes. And so risk management is just, to me now, it's the most important thing. It's the most important part in my strategy.
Great advice, man. So tell our viewers how they can find you.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to reach out, I'm on Twitter, Alex South Trades, and Instagram, Alex Salfetnikov, if you guys want to check that out. Obviously I've got my own room, but link is in the bio in my Twitter if anyone's interested. But yeah, Twitter is kind of just my main, where I reside.
Cool, man. Yeah, and viewers can see your Twitter handle down in the bottom of your screen there for the recording. So be sure to reach out to Alex and follow him on Twitter, because he's always putting out some great stuff. So thanks a lot, Alex.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe to our channel and be sure to like our videos. Also, check out tradingsim.com/blog for more content.